Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, right? And before you even fully open your eyes, your body is already just screaming for its daily chemical hit of anxiety.
Oh yeah, before you even reach for anything.
Exactly. You haven't looked at your phone, you haven't checked your bank account, but your cells are literally physically demanding that you feel stressed out. And, you aren't just having a bad morning at that point. You are biologically addicted to your own unhappiness.
It's a really jarring reality to confront, honestly, because our immediate knee-jerk reaction is almost always self-blame.
Oh, completely.
We just sit there and think, well, I just don't have enough willpower to be happy. Or, I'm just not trying hard enough to change my life.
Memorialize it constantly, like it's a character flaw. But what if your inability to change has, absolutely nothing to do with a lack of willpower?
Right, what if it's just hardware?
Exactly. So welcome to Manifestation Matters. Today we are doing a special deep dive where we're stripping away the mysticism entirely. We're looking at this through the lens of hard, measurable neuroscience.
And the core thesis of the research we're exploring today is just profound. It argues that your feeling of being stuck isn't a flaw. It's pure mechanical biology.
It's just your nervous system running a script.
Yeah.
So today's deep dive is about the exact science of why your brain is quite literally hardwired to repeat yesterday. And, more importantly, how you can actually hack that biological system to break the cycle.
And we really need to emphasize right up front that the word hardwired is not just, a clever psychological metaphor here.
Right.
It is an anatomical reality.
Right.
To grasp the gravity of this, we have to look at the mechanics of what happens the actual second you wake up in the morning.
Okay, so let's set the scene for you listening right now. Picture your typical morning, the alarm goes off. Before your feet even hit the floor, what do you usually do?
You start remembering.
Yes. You start pulling up the files of yesterday. You remember that email you ignored, or the lingering tension with your partner, or the deadline looming next week. And the moment you pull those files, your brain and your emotions are instantly trapped in the past.
Because to your brain, a memory isn't just like an abstract movie playing in your head. It is a tangible chemical trigger.
Wait, unpack that a little bit.
Sure. So every single one of those problems is tied to a specific memory.
Okay.
And every memory is connected to a specific emotion.
Okay.
So when you remember the deadline, you physically feel anxiety. When you remember the argument, you feel resentment. And this leads to this staggering biological reality outlined in our source material today.
The 95% rule, right?
Exactly. By the time you reach age 35, 95% of who you are is a memorized set of behaviors, emotional reactions, and unconscious attitudes running entirely on autopilot.
95%. That is wild. Okay, let's unpack this, because if 95% of what we do is just this unconscious program running in the background, where is that program actually stored?
Well, instinctively you'd think, oh, it's in my brain.
Right. My conscious mind is holding all of this.
But the neurobiology points somewhere else entirely. It points to the physical body.
Which completely flips our traditional, top-down understanding of human consciousness. We have this deeply ingrained idea of the mind as the absolute master, and the body is just the dumb servant carrying out orders.
But the chemistry tells a vastly different story. Through pure repetition, the body actually becomes the mind.
I want to make sure we ground this in a way that really makes sense for everyone. It's like learning a complex physical skill, right? Like, think back to when you first learned to type on a keyboard.
Oh yeah, the hunt and peck method.
Exactly. You were hyper aware of every single detail, finding the F and J keys, figuring out the spacing. It took this intense, exhausting, conscious focus from your frontal lobe.
Because your conscious mind, specifically the prefrontal cortex, was working in overdrive to coordinate all these brand new, unfamiliar synaptic connections, and that is highly energy intensive.
Right. But fast forward 5 years, you can sit there typing a complex email at 90 words a minute while, listening to music and carrying on a whole conversation with a coworker.
You don't even look at your hands.
Exactly. Your fingers just know where the keys are. Your body has memorized the action better than your conscious mind has.
And what's fascinating here is that we easily accept that when it comes to physical skills, like riding a bike or typing. But what the research reveals is that we are doing the exact same thing with our emotions.
Okay, so how does that actually work?
Well, the mechanism behind it is incredible. Let's look at the chemical loop. In the brain, your hypothalamus acts like a chemical manufacturing plant.
Okay.
Every time you have a thought, it produces a specific peptide, which is just a chemical messenger that matches that exact thought. So if you have a negative, fearful thought, The hypothalamus dispenses chemicals that make you physically feel fear throughout your entire body.
So thought produces feeling, but I mean, it doesn't stop there, does it?
No, not at all. It becomes a closed loop. Your body feels that emotion,
Yeah.
and then it sends a signal right back up the nervous system to the brain, confirming, hey, yes, the environment is threatening, we are feeling bad.
Oh, wow.
And then the brain registers that negative physical feeling, generates more negative thoughts to match it, which releases more chemicals.
So for the person listening to this right now who just tried to sit down and meditate this morning, or, maybe just tried to have a peaceful commute, but they felt their skin crawling with anxiety, that's not them failing at mindfulness.
Not at all.
That's literally their cells demanding a chemical fix, like an actual addiction.
Yes. From a purely biochemical standpoint, it is indistinguishable from an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
When you flood your body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline day after day, year after year, the cells in your body actually adapt to accommodate that flood.
Wait, what do you mean they adapt?
Well, when a cell divides, the new cell will literally have more receptor sites for cortisol and fewer receptor sites for feel-good neurochemicals like serotonin or dopamine.
Wait, really? The physical structure of the cell changes just to prioritize the stress.
Yes. It undergoes a biological process called receptor upregulation for those familiar chemicals. Your body physically hungers for the misery because it has built the infrastructure to process it.
That is terrifying, but also so validating.
It completely demystifies that immense internal resistance we all feel when we try to change our lives. Your conscious mind, which, remember, only controls about 5% of your reality, is enthusiastically saying, hey, let's be joyful today.
Right, let's do yoga and be happy.
Exactly. But your body, the other 95%, is acting like an addict going through withdrawal. It's saying, wait a minute, where's my morning dose of anxiety? We haven't panicked about the mortgage yet. Give me the familiar chemicals.
Okay, but if our bodies are so incredibly smart and capable of adapting at a cellular level like that, why would they view a positive change like, feeling at peace or manifesting a better job as a literal threat? That just seems like a massive evolutionary glitch.
It's not a glitch so much as it's outdated software. You see, the body equates familiarity with survival.
Even if the familiarity is miserable.
Exactly. Even if the familiar feeling is toxic stress, the body knows it can survive that state because, well, it survived it yesterday. The unknown, even if it's the joy or abundance you're actively trying to cultivate, is perceived by your primitive biology as unpredictable.
And therefore dangerous.
Exactly.
Huh.
Potentially lethal.
In the self-help space, you always hear people compare this to running from a saber-toothed tiger.
Right, the classic evolutionary analogy.
Yeah, but honestly, I think a more accurate way to understand the mechanism for us today is to look at how we treat our computers. So imagine your computer pulling 90% of its processing power to run this massive, frantic antivirus scan because it thinks the system is under an acute attack.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Right. And while it's doing that, everything else, your web browser, your video editor, your background applications, it all just freezes and you get the buffering wheel. We are basically treating an unread email in our inbox or a pending debt like a saber-toothed tiger. We're running a marathon while sitting perfectly still at our desks.
That is a brilliant way to frame it because it perfectly describes the autonomic nervous system. When you perceive a threat and listen, the brain does not distinguish between a physical threat in the room and a stressful thought about a pending credit card bill. Your sympathetic nervous system kicks into high gear.
And most of us listening know that this is the fight or flight response. But the source material really highlights that the long-term consequences of leaving this antivirus scan running permanently are just catastrophic.
They really are.
Yeah.
We know that blood devotes to the extremities for quick action, right? You need to run or fight. But let's look at what is getting the buffering wheel, to use your analogy.
Okay, yeah. What shuts down?
Blood is literally draining away from your prefrontal cortex. You temporarily become less intelligent.
Wow.
You physically cannot think creatively because the biological hardware required for creative thought is being starved of oxygen and nutrients. Furthermore, your immune system and your digestive systems are massively suppressed.
Because the body is saying, we don't need to digest lunch right now or fight off a mild cold. We need to survive the next 5 minutes.
Precisely. But the most alarming part of the research dives into epigenetics. Chronic exposure to these stress hormones actually penetrates the cell membrane and alters your genetic expression.
It changes your genes.
Yes, it unspools the DNA and presses the genetic buttons that create disease. You are exhausting your vital life force and altering your genetic destiny, defending against a predator that only exists in your mind.
And it turns us into a very specific version of ourselves, too. Like, when that alarm is blaring, you become hyper-focused on the material world. You kind of have to become selfish, obsessive, and constantly trying to predict the future based on the past just to ensure you stay safe.
Right, you're purely in survival mode.
It completely blocks any biological ability to manifest a new reality.
Because creation requires vulnerability and energy. Survival requires armor and defense. You just cannot be in both states simultaneously.
Okay, so our alarm systems are jammed in the on position, our cells are physically covered in extra cortisol receptors, and we are altering our genetic expression through chronic stress.
It sounds bad when you put it like that.
It sounds incredibly bleak, but here's where it gets really interesting, right? The brain is not a fixed, rigid piece of hardware. We have this amazing mechanism of neuroplasticity.
Yes, exactly. The old scientific consensus was that the brain was static in adulthood.
Yeah.
Once you grew up, that was it. But we now know the brain is highly plastic. It has the miraculous capacity to reorganize itself, build completely new connections, and essentially rewire its own circuitry based entirely on where you direct your attention.
And the texts refer to this mechanism as unlearning. I want to look closely at how this actually works because I love the visual for this.
Go for it.
Imagine a path in a dense forest. You walk down this specific path every single day. Because of that repetition, the dirt is packed down, there's no brush in the way, it's totally effortless to walk.
It's the path of least resistance.
Right, that path is your familiar habit, it's your baseline anxiety. But then one day, you decide to stop using that path. You consciously catch yourself and say, nope, not going that way today. Biologically, what actually happens to that path in the brain?
Well, there's a core principle in neuroscience called Hebb's law, which states that neurons that fire together wire together.
Correct.
But the inverse is also true. Neurons that fire out of sync fail to link. When you stop having the same thought, you stop sending electrical impulses down that specific neural pathway. And the brain is highly, highly efficient.
It doesn't want to waste energy.
Exactly. So it has these specialized cells called microglial cells, which act kind of like the brain's gardeners. When a neural pathway starts being used, the microglial cells literally go in and prune away the synaptic connections. The forest reclaims the path.
Oh, that is so cool. So every single time you feel that familiar trigger, you know, that urge to complain or panic or fall back into victimhood and you consciously stop it, you aren't just practicing like good psychology.
Good physical.
You are deploying microglial cells to physically prune away the biological hardware of your anxiety.
You are biologically breaking the habit of being yourself. But pruning the old path is only step one. Nature abhors a vacuum, right? You have to blaze a new trail. And this is where the specific exercise of mental rehearsal becomes so vital.
Now, I need to push back here for a second,
Okay.
because this is where a lot of people listening might feel their skepticism radar going off.
Yeah.
I hear you saying we can think our way to new neural pathways, but that sounds dangerously close to like toxic positivity. How does mental rehearsal differ from just blindly ignoring real-world problems and pasting a fake smile on your face?
That is such a crucial distinction to make. Toxic positivity is an attempt to mask a physiological stress response. Your body is pumping out cortisol, the alarm is blaring, but you are saying through gritted teeth, everything is fine, I'm fine.
Right, you're just repressing it.
Exactly. Mental rehearsal, on the other hand, is a focused, conscious process of installing new neurological hardware. When you sit down, close your eyes, and intensely visualize a new action or new emotional response to your environment, the brain's frontal lobe acts like a CEO.
Okay, so it takes charge.
Yes, it pulls from different neural networks and seamlessly pieces them together to create a completely new model of behavior.
And the brain actually logs that rehearsal as a real physical event, like it doesn't know you're just sitting on your couch.
Completely. Functional MRI scans show that if an athlete mentally rehearses running a race, or a musician mentally rehearses a piano piece, the exact same neural circuits fire in their brain as if they were physically doing it. The brain literally does not know the difference between a deeply imagined internal event and an external reality.
Wow. So if you mentally rehearse how you want to respond to a difficult coworker, or how calm you want to feel when checking your bank account, you aren't ignoring reality. You are laying down the physical synaptic infrastructure so that when you actually encounter that coworker, your brain already has a well-worn path to peace instead of a well-worn path to anger.
Precisely. You are upgrading the software so the hardware changes.
Hmm.
But rewiring the brain is only half the biological equation.
So what does this all mean? We deploy the microglial cells to prune the bad forest paths. We use mental rehearsal to install the new synaptic connections. What is the missing piece here?
The body, specifically the heart.
The heart.
Yes. The rest of your biology has to be tuned to the exact same frequency as your newly rewired brain. If you install the new software in the brain, but your body is still chemically locked in the past, you are going to experience a massive biological conflict.
Ah, okay. The sources use a really great radio station analogy to explain this.
Yeah, walk us through that.
So think of your brain's thoughts as the electrical signal and your heart's feelings as the magnetic signal. What happens if you are sitting there thinking, I want an abundant, peaceful life, so you're sending out that electrical signal, but your body is physically feeling the anxiety, fear, and lack from your past trauma?
You are tuning your biological radio to two completely different frequencies at the exact same time, and you just get static. Now, to ground this in the physics outlined in the research, when the sources talk about sending a message to the quantum field, they aren't talking about New Age mysticism.
Right, which is a relief to hear.
They are referring to the measurable electromagnetic energy our bodies emit into our immediate environment.
Because the heart generates a massive electromagnetic field.
It generates an electromagnetic field with an amplitude roughly 60 times greater than the brain's.
60 times?
Yes. In neurocardiology, the heart is actually recognized as having its own intrinsic nervous system. It has around 40,000 sensory neurites. It literally acts as a little brain. And here's the mechanism that really matters. The heart sends more neural signals to the brain, primarily via the vagus nerve, than the brain sends to the heart.
Wait, hold on. The heart is actually directing traffic in the brain.
In many ways, yes. When we were living in the stress of the past, our heart rhythms are erratic and chaotic. This chaotic rhythm sends a distress signal up the vagus nerve straight to the amygdala, which is the brain's fear center, telling it to keep the survival antivirus scan running.
Keep the cortisol flowing.
Exactly. But when we actively cultivate elevated emotions like deep gratitude or compassion, the heart enters a measurable state called coherence.
And what does coherence physically do?
A coherent heart rhythm acts like a powerful metronome. It sends a steady, harmonious signal up the vagus nerve that literally inhibits the amygdala. It turns off the fear response and synchronizes the entire body. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is why the research highlights gratitude as the ultimate state of reception.
Because usually for those of us listening, the way we live our lives is entirely dependent on the external environment.
Right.
Like we wait for something good to happen before we feel grateful. We say, I'll feel grateful when the relationship is fixed or when I get the promotion. We wait for the outside world to change our internal chemistry.
Which is living purely by cause and effect. But if you want to break the biological cycle, you have to cause and effect.
Oh, I like that. Cause and effect.
Feeling gratitude deeply in your body before the event occurs tells your biology, on a cellular level, that the desired event has already happened. By achieving heart-brain coherence, you are aligning your internal state so completely that your cells literally believe the future has arrived.
Okay, so we have the complete map now. We understand how to prune the synapses, we understand the cellular addiction to stress, and we know we need to create heart-brain coherence through the vagus nerve using gratitude. We have all the mechanics.
Yes.
So why, when we actually try to apply this on, like, a random Tuesday, does it feel so incredibly physically terrible to change?
Because you are stepping into what the texts call the void. You are crossing the river of change. This raises an important question about how we handle that transition. This is the empty space between the old self you were leaving behind and the new self that hasn't fully materialized in your environment yet.
Okay.
You've stopped firing the old neural pathways, but the new reality hasn't completely solidified.
And in that void, my internal monologue just goes absolutely crazy. I mean, if you're listening right now and you've tried to make a major life change, you know exactly what this feels like. Your skin crawls. Your brain says, this feels weird. This isn't working. This is stupid. Just turn back. Go back to the familiar misery. And it is so easy to mistake that physical and mental discomfort for failure. To think, oh, I must be doing this wrong because I feel terrible right now.
But this is where understanding the biology changes everything. How do we interpret discomfort? In our modern world, we usually view discomfort as a warning sign, a red light telling us to stop. But in the context of neurological change, discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is the biological proof that you are successfully leaving your old programs behind.
So the weirdness, the anxiety of change, the urge to quit, That is actually the physical sensation of biological success.
Yes. Your body is quite literally going through chemical withdrawals from its old state of being. The cells are crying out for the cortisol they are so used to. Your reticular activating system, which filters information for your brain, is struggling because it no longer has its familiar baseline. Of course, it feels uncomfortable. You are in uncharted territory.
You're off the path in the woods.
Exactly. But the unknown is the only place where new neural connections can actually be forged. If you are in the known, you are just running the old script.
So you have to be willing to sit in the void. You have to endure the cellular withdrawal.
Exactly. Your vision of the future must simply become stronger than your physiological conditioning. When you are crossing that river of change, and your body is begging for its old chemical hit of anger or worry or judgment, and you consciously catch yourself and you use mental rehearsal to redirect your thoughts back to a coherent state, you are winning a profound biological battle.
Wow.
Every single time you catch an old thought and stop it from producing an old feeling, you are commanding your biology.
You are taking the remote control back from the autopilot. And that really brings us to the core, undeniable lesson of this entire deep dive. Knowing all the science you know, understanding microglial cells, charting out the vagus nerve, measuring heart coherence, all of this knowledge is just the rumor of change. The actual practice is the change.
Beautifully said. Information alone will not cross the river for you. You have to actually sit down and do the mental rehearsal. You have to be willing to sit in discomfort of the withdrawal and not retreat to your familiar pain. Human beings are not fundamentally designed to suffer. Our neurobiology is explicitly designed to adapt and create. We just have to use the machinery of our biology correctly, rather than letting it use us.
So for you listening to this right now, as you go about the rest of your day, you have a choice to make. You can wake up tomorrow morning, immediately pull up the mental files of yesterday's problems, flood your body with the familiar stress chemicals, and let your cellular addictions dictate your destiny. Or you can actively, consciously rehearse a new response to your life. You can choose to prune the old path.
It's all about what you choose to rehearse.
Right. Think back to that morning routine we talked about at the very beginning of the show. What if tomorrow morning, instead of reaching for yesterday's stress before your feet even hit the floor, you pause? You mentally rehearse tomorrow's triumph. You feel the profound gratitude before the day even begins, sending that signal straight to your amygdala that you are safe and you are ready to create.
That is where the magic happens.
Think about how much of your daily, vital life energy has been tied up for years, maybe decades, running that massive background antivirus scan, fighting imaginary predators, and feeding your body's hidden addiction to past stress. Imagine what you could build, what you could invent, or what you could finally experience with all of that newly reclaimed energy once you finally step into the void and cross the river of change.
I love that.
Me too. Well, that wraps up this deep dive on Manifestation Matters. If this changed the way you look at your own biology, please hit that like button, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a deep dive, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear what new future you're mentally rehearsing today. We'll see you next time.